All right, Rick, this is some feedback for you for your character. So here is, let's see, let's get this pulled out. So here's your concept, your character concept. And I've just been making some adjustments to try to more match your reference and keep this pretty clean. Here's kind of where we were right now. I just cloned your tool and then just brought it over into like a clean file. I'll do parts of this, but I'll kind of just more talk through this rather than do everything literally. You can kind of see also, I have, it took me a while and I took off. I don't keep my history when I duplicate my models, but you can kind of see that it starts off pretty rough, and then I'm just refining what you have and making things simpler and cleaner, refining the proportions, and going from there. One thing you'll notice I'm doing is I'm keeping a lot of separate subtools, right? So I'm simplifying a lot of the anatomy down into pretty simple shapes. If you look up any like simplified anatomy or character blockouts for stylized characters, they'll usually look something like this. This one I downloaded from someone else. I have my own, but I just use this one as an example. So the idea is that we just have these we're keeping our characters limbs and pieces very simple, and these really big forms like the pectoralis and the deltoid, and the neck, right, and even the base of the skull. If we keep those as separate objects and then merge them together once we get all the proportions and everything right and we get everything kind of pushed together, things start to go a lot easier for us in terms of assembling the body parts. So yeah, so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and kind of show you how I started on this. So we'll clone this. So cloning just does a duplicate of your subtool. I'm going to go ahead and take this and split to parts, split to similar parts. Say okay. I'm just going to make it so I can more easily work with these guys. I'm using a basic material. I'm using my own layout. You can download that. I have it on the drive. Just let me know. And my own hotkeys, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So see my brushes change down there. But I'm just using hotkeys because it makes my life go a lot faster. And so my most common brushes that I use are maps to 1 through 8. Okay. A hotkey that's really useful because you might think to yourself like, well, I hate having to search through here. If you hold Alt and left tap on a mesh, you'll automatically select it. You can turn on solo if you just want to look at that object by itself. I have a hotkey set up, so I press Control 1 it solos just like it would in Maya. So that's something you can do too. So I have that basic material. You can see I'm just using like a darker, like this dark blue color, just because I like it. It doesn't really matter. You could use a different color. You can use gray. A lot of times I'm just using gray most of the time. You might even want to use something like this where you have like a material like this where it's just like more like clay. It's really up to you and how you like to work. But yeah, I use that basic material most of the time when I'm working on a character and I'm trying to, especially in the early blockout phase, because I can understand the forms a lot better. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's just go ahead and solo this. I'm going to make this something that's a lot easier for me to manage. So you'll notice well, let's take a look at some of these references, and I can send you this pure ref board later. So we look at a lot of these characters, right? Like there's one of the things you'll notice is there's very clean shapes, right? Like there's some very clean underlying forms and shapes, and how they interact with each other is also very clean, right? Like they're like almost like primitives, like advanced primitives that are mushed together. And so that's something that you'll see on a lot of stylized characters is so like essentially and this is like mildly stylized. This is like action hero stylized. This one's super stylized, right? Like the more stylized you go for, the more simplifying you are the forms and the shapes. And how much you're simplifying those forms and shapes really depends on how much what the style of your film or project is. I'm just going to rearrange these a little bit to kind of more correspond to um, what they're referencing. Let's see, let's go down here. All these BOGO ones from Zootopia. Here's some more Zootopia ones. These ones are more animal topology stuff. They're not really super related to the character that we have right here, but I pulled them apart. I pulled them aside at one point. Okay. This one's got like some more creature crocodile kind of looks, which is what I was pulling those ones for. These ones are for faces. Here's more animal stuff. Let's see. stylized faces, and stylized faces. So I'm just organizing my pure ref board a bit, and I'll take these guys. What I might do is I might take this guy right here, and I might go, oops, I'm just going to do a screenshot, and I might go ahead and just paste them just so, I have them just separately. So I can always go back over there. But that way, like my main reference here, and I might even, sometimes I'll like make it larger just so it's like kind of like my center, like my centralizing kind of like home location. But I'll be studying and looking at a lot of these guys to get a better understanding of, we're making this character kind of like big and kind of strong and gruff. And so there might be some of these like I kind of purposely pulled references for like really exaggerated, like muscular kind of faces with like these jawbones and these cheekbones and how significant those are. And they are all to some degree or another, um, you know, significant. And then down here, I just have these are like for more for musculature, and it's probably going to be something closer to this, but it is still pretty useful to kind of like see these shapes and understand them a little bit better. And then we also have this like Zootopia reference, and I don't think you guys are quite coming for the Zootopia philosophy anatomy, but you can kind of see like they don't have pectoralis. They're more like real animals, but just like kind of standing up. So it looks amazing, obviously, and I often go back and look at these. I love this sculpt. It's an amazing sculpt. But the you guys probably aren't going necessarily that look, but we can go ahead and use this as a reference for his head. And that's kind of like what I usually start with, is doing a full body block out, and then I usually start refining the head a bit because that's where I start to really feel the character's personality come through. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that. So we're going to go ahead and take this philosophy as simplifying and stylizing your character. Let's go ahead and I'll get his face too, so we can kind of keep that in our minds. I'll come over here, and I'll go back and delete a lot of these things I'm duplicating, but I'm just gonna keep these here just in case. All right. So I'll kind of also reference my own work, but if I come in here and look at this one, you'll notice that what I did was I kind of cut the cranium off and the lower jaw stuff just so I can keep that really clean. Because you'll notice like in here, it kind of gets kind of soft, and eventually we'll merge things down together. But for the most part, I want this to be a little bit simpler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off perspective, come over to the side view, you can hold shift to snap it. Let's make sure this is overlapping that. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a slice curve brush, which can be found under just the brush menu. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and slice, slice, and if you tap Alt, then you can essentially create cut points there. And so you can see I accidentally cut it. But let's see, let's try this again. Oops. You press Alt, you can get like these kind of curvature shapes, and then if you double tap Alt, you can get like a corner. You'll see I just kind of cut my mesh. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and split hidden. So we're just going to, I have this hotkey that's A. So get my, if you get to this point, you're like, okay, Caleb's going too fast and I can't find all these things. He's not mentioning where they are. Pause the video, grab my configuration and my hotkeys and load them in. You can load in the configurations from config, load UI file, and then hotkeys is under, if you go down, there's hotkeys, load hotkeys. So if I press A, I have this like custom menu and so a lot of these things that are buried in under menus, I like to separate them out. So I'm just going to go ahead and press A, split hidden. So that's going to separate those guys out into separate subtools. If I hold Alt, remember, I tap on them, I can see them. I'm pressing Shift F to like show the polyframe. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's click on this one. I'm going to solo this one again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this hole. So we're going to go ahead and go to A, close holes. I don't know what they added a button. Okay, interesting. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run ZRemesher. So we're going to, you have Dynamesh, it looks like, but I would usually run ZRemesher pretty frequently on these kinds of things. So let's run ZRemesher. Let's see how low it gets. I probably want to make sure symmetry is turned on if it isn't already. So we can see there. Let's pull that back. Let's make sure symmetry is on so we get a symmetrical ZRemesh. ZRemesher is found down here. ZRemesher is just the quad draw retopologizing tool. Something else I'll be doing is if I press D, um, you might not, it might come up with a pop-up window that says, do you want to turn on this has no subdivision levels, do you want to turn on dynamic subdivision? I'd say yes. If you come over here and look at these, let's turn off solo. Almost all of these have dynamic subdivision turned on. Where's that crocodile face? Right, and so that just means I don't have to subdivide my model at all, and it gives me a smooth, it's like smooth preview in Maya. So we'll come back over here. So let's go back, and then we'll take this one, and I might honestly just delete this one. That's what I kind of did, was delete it, say okay. I did that slice curve tool. If you control Z that back, another option you could do is there's a knife tool now. It's K knife curve. And we could do curve or lasso. Let's try curve. So we just do, it's the same philosophy, right? We're just kind of drawing that, and then oops. Okay. There you go. And so you'll see it cuts down and does like a lot of that processing for us, but we lose that other geometry. So in this case, I don't care because I'm going to recreate those pieces of geometry. And then you could also shave them off like this too if you wanted to like get like a rounded corner on the skull. If for any reason it's like asymmetrical, what I can do is I could just do mirror and weld, and that's just going to mirror, make sure it's symmetrical across the center line. But either way, it doesn't matter because I'm going to zero mesh this. Okay. Sometimes you can run zero mesher more than once, and it usually cleans up your geometry quite a bit more. But yeah, the top edge flow is pretty good. The nice thing about this is I can start to like smooth out a lot of these forms. I'm pressing D to turn on dynamic subdivision level. And a lot of this stuff I'm just going to kind of smooth out a lot of that information out and just make this a little bit simpler to work with. Okay. So you can see, especially with Dynamesh and that high poly, it gets pretty lumpy pretty quickly, right? We also have these like weird, like, you know, his mouth is here, but then he has this ridge right here that kind of goes into the top of his mouth, so it doesn't feel very consistent right there. So what I would do either is, you know, use like my standard brush to kind of like fill in the space and move that edge of the mouth down so it lines up with this front part of the mouth, right? So we have like this kind of like edge of the mouth that comes down here. So I'm just trying to get these all on the same page, right? And then if you have like this kind of, you can see there's like a little bit of a gap there, like a weird edge. I could just use clay. So usually what I'll do is turn off RGB on clay and just bring the Z intensity down. Clay is nice for like filling in gaps and crevices. And if you have like a wobbly surface, it can be nice. You know, I usually try to use smooth if I can, but sometimes smooth doesn't work super well. A lot of times what I'll also be doing while I'm working on this is use clay buildup. So clay buildup looks like that. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just turn off the alpha on clay buildup. And then you can turn down the focal shift, which just changes the shape of the alpha. And then again, we're just bringing down the Z intensity. So it's a nice form building up shape there. So I'll just use clay buildup mostly for like building up a lot of my forms. And it's really good for building volume. If I got like an edge, you can see I've got a bit of a weird like pokey edge here. It's going to use trim dynamic. Trim dynamic is going to be my brush that's used to like flatten a lot of sharp edges. So if I want to add a new plane anywhere and cut in a new plane, or if I, especially like you can see when I was smoothing here, I was getting like, there's a pull there. So when it smooths down, it naturally gets kind of like a sort of a gross shape there. I can just, you know, use trim dynamic to kind of clean that up. A lot of times I'll be rotating it a lot, so you'll see like I'm looking in this area right here and here. There's just some weird shadows, and some of the stuff you might be like, I don't naturally see those things, like, or I didn't notice until you brought it up. But it's important to just like get in the practice of like rotating around your object, looking at it from all kinds of different angles, and then you know, addressing those. The nice thing about also having this kind of like low poly model is it makes it really easy for me to keep the shapes clean, and I can come back in and I can focus on cleaning up some of my shapes too. He's kind of looks like a dolphin right now, but like I'm gonna like make the corners of his mouth, you know, like a little bit closer to each other. Just using the move brush. I'm using move topological actually, which is pretty much the same thing as move brush. Just it's harder to accidentally grab something that's not connected. So it's actually pretty nice for selecting an object and not messing around with this up here. It does a pretty good job. It's not perfect, but it's better than just move, I think. Okay. Your character is gonna has this like kind of permanent frown or this frowny face. You could model it in later, but I would try to like if I was doing this, especially if your character had a lot more expressivity, like you wanted him to have different expressions, I would try to model him with a smoother. Ooh, okay, that's interesting. I would model him with like a smoother uh, like lip line, and then go back in later. And when you're posing him or something like that, then you can actually pose him into that um, face and not lose the flexibility of a neutral face. I might come in here and I'm going to use trim dynamic just to knock down this really sharp edge that came right there. And you'll notice most of my brushes I turn them down from their default. I'm also going to kind of knock down this stuff right here. Go for like more of a round head back here. And we can always smooth out as well. Okay. I'm not going to worry too much about what's going on inside the mouth. This right here, I'm going to delete this for now because I think that's just, that's going to be easier to remake. This right here, you can see I did it on the other one, but I just kind of did like a color like this one. So if you want to just switch over to like, you just turn on RGB and click fill object. You turn on RGB back off. And I'm pressing V to switch my color. And you'll see that I just colorize that. And I did the same thing with these. I'm alt clicking on this, remember? And I just come in here and let's set it to like a not quite white. And so we'll just fill that object, fill object. I'll switch our color back. Oh, you can see I didn't actually need to switch to RGB. And so then I'll just tap on these guys and oops, let's make sure we have symmetry on. Let's just move those in. And almost always, like what I would do if I was given a mesh like this, and I didn't make it, and it's clear that the person isn't like doing a lot of like retopologizing or quad draw fixing for their models as they're working. That's like I do ZRemesher pretty frequently. So I like Dynamesh my models together and then ZRemesh them. Dynamesh them, then ZRemesh them. So as I'm working, what I would probably do is the first thing I'd see if I saw someone's model, like if I grab these, right, these are really high poly, I might just go ahead and just run a ZRemesher on them. And mine doesn't have the poly count showing anywhere, but it should be a little bit lower. Yeah, they're a little bit lower. And then I'm just going to go ahead and fill the object. Switch my color back. These are really sharp and pointy, and they're kind of like gross. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to inflate them a bit. And then what we can do is we can just run something like polish on them, which can be found under the deformation tab. No, I don't like that. Let's go ahead and just inflate them a little bit. Ooh, not too much. Well, let's try ZRemeshing them a couple more times. Huh, weird. Why is the top, why are they, oh, there's duplicates of them, okay. All right, so that can happen. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and grab these duplicates. We're gonna go ahead and do auto grouping. So when we turn on the polyframing, we can see these. The nice thing about auto grouping is Control Shift. Let's get this brush size smaller. Control Shift is your selection. Right now it's set to a knife, but normally it's like select rectangle. So if you Control Shift and tap on a mesh, you can quickly isolate it. So you're just looking at that object by itself and nothing else. And so if I do Control Shift tap and then Control Shift tap on it again, it inverts my selection. And then each time I Control Shift tap on one of these guys, it hides it. So that's the default behavior of this brush is like anything I have selected is visible, but if you have polygroups, Control Shift tapping lets you auto hide and show things. So we'll just do that. And I'm gonna get rid of all these ones over here. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and go delete hidden. And then what I can do is just mirror and weld. The reason why I do mirror and welds or mirror first is it goes, oh, it actually worked that time. But a lot of times what I'll do is it'll go from screen left to right. I can't remember. There's like a way it likes to do it. So sometimes if it doesn't mirror the way you want it to, that's just what you got to do. So let's go ahead and I'm going to switch the move tool. I'll press W on my keyboard to switch the move tool. Alt tap on this just to get the move gizmo up here. They move by alt clicking on it. You get the move gizmo to be like wherever you click on it. So if I hold alt and tap on the mesh, then it does that. And I have symmetry on, which I turn on by pressing X. And then I'm just going to move these in a little bit. And then I can just switch over to move brush and then just shift these in if I want to. And I might go ahead and just, inflate these. So I just switched over to inflate brush really quickly. And then we're just going to fill it in, fill with the color. And let's go ahead and, so then what I'll do is I'll just use that move topological brush to sort of, play around with these a little bit. I don't mind that they're kind of like chunky. I'd rather them being a little chunky than being sharp, that's for sure. If they're sharp, it's a little strange. Or needle-like. It's just going to feel kind of uncomfortable. And teeth can be pretty challenging to make. Oops. I think we might have some. 1,000% sure. No, I don't have any here. Let me go ahead and pull up some really quick. Let's see. That's pretty good. And I'll drag them over onto the other screen in a second. Okay, now here we go. All right. And so I'll come over here. I'm just going to drag these over. Let's bring these other dinosaur-y kind of looking things. Control-Alt left to resize these to be near each other. Press Control-P to pack them. And so you can see there's like a lot of these like very nice kind of stylization of teeth. Shapes are amazing. Here's some like dinosaur creatures. Here's another like Zootopia style character. Here's his teeth are pretty like standard what you'd expect. This one is a really nice example of like these are all like really simplified shapes. You can see that nose is kind of like what I was doing on the other one. Here's another interesting one with teeth. And we're not going to worry about it too much, like I said, but these could be really good references. All right, let's keep going. All right. Before I get much further, what I might do is I'm going to go ahead and insert some primitives. So I'm going to do a cylinder and press D, so it subdivides. This one's going to be the main kind of trunk of his neck. So the way I would usually treat the trunk of the neck is, I'd want it to be about as wide as his cranium's going to be, not much, no longer or no larger. And then what I do is it's usually a little tilted forward. The neck kind of tilts forward and with the esophagus. And I'll usually do something like this. And we might just scale it up a little bit, pull it down. We can cut it off with that any of those trim brushes to keep it from going inside the mouth. And then what we can do is I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this object. So we'll duplicate it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get, so if I scale this up, let's go ahead and turn on symmetry. We can go ahead and get essentially a combination object, and you can kind of see it here, right? We're going to get like a combination object of like, you could go ahead and model this in if you wanted to with another object. This is sternocleidomastoid, I think, because this is like muscle that goes from here to here. And then you have your traps, which go along the back. And then you can see here's our like trachea kind of object. So if we come in here, I might go ahead and just pull this stuff forward. Let's go ahead and pull it like this. And, a lot of things I'm simplifying a lot, we're making a lot of assumptions, right? Like I'm making a lot of like really quick assumptions because I've done this a lot of times, right? Like I know a lot of anatomy stuff. I'm not like a master by any means, but I've definitely done a lot of anatomy related things and stylized characters. So, we can't spend forever like talking about like, okay, here's what I'm thinking of. Here's anatomy. Here's this, that, and the other thing. Let me go ahead and make sure I didn't turn on symmetry with that one. Oops. Well, there we go. You want to pull up reference, and I usually will have reference of like real people as well, right? Because it's a good idea to look at reality as well as stylized characters. So we'll just go ahead and pull this forward, and these kinds of things are really helpful. Kind of seeing that simplification. We have this separation of this area with the shoulders and the chest by the clavicles. And so, you know, just inserting like a rod object in here. What I could do is we'll do this. We're gonna, I want to show you another tool, brush, curve tube. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go like this. Okay. And then I can just change the brush size, just pull that down a little bit, just tap on the mesh, maybe pull it up a little bit, it should be a little bit thicker. And just tap on the mesh once, and then what I can do is I can select that, split it into another subtool. I like to do that pretty frequently. And then now we have this like, oops, now we have this like sternum, or not sternum, but this clavicle kind of objects that we can work with. And you know, you know, this is something that when we merge them all together, it kind of disappears. All right, let's come back to the face because we've kind of taken a sidestep. All right, so one thing I was gonna do, I did was I actually took these, and these aren't actually separated out. You can see the hands, and at some point we must have used the hands, the same object as the hands. So I'm just gonna go ahead and split those hands out. I'm gonna take these eyes, and I might duplicate them. A lot of times what I'll do though is, in this case, because our character has a very distinct kind of eyeball object area, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in here. Let's solo this for a second. I'm gonna smooth that out. Maybe use clay to fill in that hole right there because it's got like a weird deep hole. And I'm just gonna smooth that area out. And then what I'm gonna do is I'll go ahead and let that, we are gonna go ahead and like kind of create a cavity. You'll notice on a lot of these guys, they have kind of like this eye socket area where you have like a brow and you have a cheekbone shelf. And so it's like circling the eye socket. So you have like a shelf here and then the edge. So we'll want to build that in like kind of like the cheekbone. So we have a side plane like this one and then a top facing plane. And then we'll kind of want to do the same thing with the eyebrow where you'll have a downward and upward facing plane. That's like the simplest thing you could do. You can see even BOGO has it, right? You have like this cheekbone shape here, and then you have the meat of your what's it called, the eye socket. And so I might just come in here with like the move brush, and I'm just gonna move that in a little bit. And you know, this mesh is still like pretty low res, so this is easy for me to manipulate and work around with. So what I might do is I might use that clay buildup, and so we're just gonna go ahead and kind of build that mass back in for the cheekbone, and just kind of draw it up to here. Just using again that clay buildup with a really small Z intensity, and I turned off the alpha on it. What I might do is I could use like hard polish, and I'm gonna do press Shift D and then press Control D. So Shift D to turn off dynamic subdivision. You can see I put mine up here, and I'm actually gonna subdivide my model because that's actually gonna give me more geometry to work with. And so then what I can do is I can come in here. Let's just pull this up a little bit, and I'm just gonna go ahead and just like define that cheekbone kind of shape there. And I'm going to use, you know, clay right here. So we're just going to use a little clay to flatten and fill that kind of jaw muscle area out. Okay. At some point I'm going to go ahead and build in the skull shape, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually down here. We want to separate like jaw bone from the skull. So what I'm going to do is I'm just actually going to kind of like eat away at this and carve out this area right here, where I can drop in like a skull object in a second, or a cranium object. And you can see BOGO kind of has it too, right? Like his jaw and his face kind of feels like it's attached to his skull, right? Instead of them merging together. And so I'm just going ahead and using just trim dynamic to help with that, and then can just smooth that. And if it's not smoothing fast enough, right, you just go down a subdivision level, pressing Shift D to kind of bring that down, and then pressing D to go up a subdivision level. But mostly, you know, I'm going to try to get everything done in the lowest subdivision level possible. Okay, so let's see. There's like a little bit of a weird spot right here, so I'm holding Alt to use that clay buildup to push down, and then, you know, build it back up. Okay, and I'm going to get the eyeball object in here, back in here in a second. So let's go ahead and I'm going to turn off solo. So what I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to first kind of block in with his like closed eye thingy here. I'm going to switch the move tool, press Alt, click on that. Press X to turn on symmetry. We're going to press this button to center the pivot point in the eyeball object. And I'm just going to go ahead and scale it up a bit and just get it to fit inside his, like kind of take up a good portion of that eye socket area. Might even elongate it in one axis as well. Oh, what the heck? Let's turn on local symmetry and turn on dynamic. It can be sometimes weird. Scaling with that tool is sometimes for some reason really annoying. So I know it's going to be kind of also tilted down a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to kind of mush this around to fit his eye socket region. Something I know I'm probably going to want to do, and I do this over on the other one. Let's get this again and turn on. Oh, because I got rid of all that. So we might have to come in and start adjusting some of these guys now that I got rid of that. Oops. Because these have dynamic subdivision level on, they smooth a lot faster than you might expect. So anyways, just keep that in mind. Something else I might do on this one. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to subdivide it, pressing Control D, subdivide it. And what I might do is I might go ahead and build up that kind of eyelid shape. I'm just going to draw it in for now. And then just so the reason why I'm doing this is because I like to kind of see as best as I can like what my character is going to end up looking, because our characters, later on going to have his like eyes closed a lot of the time, and maybe in this pose. But if I don't do that, then like if I don't if I'm like making my character neutral, like true neutral all the time, especially in the early block out, then it can, that might not be understanding like where everything goes and getting a good look at my character and how they're going to end up looking. So I'm just, even though it looks really gross, I'm just using clay buildup to kind of build up the mushy bit on either side, and then I'm just using Damien Standard to essentially carve out, and then I can use the inverse of Damien Standard, and right now the Z intensity of 33 is kind of high, to just like draw like a sharper line, and then we can use like hard polish to like flatten out some of the forms or something like that. So doing something like that, let's go ahead and push these in a little bit. They kind of look like walnuts or something. And I might go ahead and just pull his face, even though like his character, and it's up to your team to talk about it, even though his face might be, it's his design is intended to be like, his eyes are more on the side. I'm making like a creative decision right now to say that I don't think that's going to work super well. Because if you want him to like be looking forward and something like that, you'd have to really screw up his camera. One thing I'm doing that's not good is I'm not using perspective. I should always be using perspective unless I have a really good reason not to. A lot of times if I go to a side view and I want like a pure side view, like if I wanted to cut like a perfect silhouette of something from the side, I'll turn off perspective, so it's like purely orthographic. But just keep that in mind. But let's see. Okay. You'll see I jump around a lot. I'm looking at like his form and shape, like I'm like kind of like looking at his silhouette in a lot of cases. I could get some more definition, and you'll see I kind of have that in this one, right? Like I have a lot more definition in his like forehead and here. But we can get that later. So let's go ahead and I might narrow his snout again also just a bit. It's tempting to go full on like I want to make everything look like a stylized character as soon as possible, like sharpen certain edges, make certain things like super clean, and doing like all these cool things that you see on like another character model. But it's a good idea to focus more on large scale forms, because otherwise you're going to work yourself into a hole later on that's really hard to get out of. So I'm going to fill this in while I can. It's kind of like a goofy kind of cavity area. You can use your instincts, and it takes a little bit to build it up. But if something looks a little off, especially when you rotate, like I feel like that's a little off, there's something I need to do there. That I would spend some time to like address that. But let's see. I want to keep a lot of his forms as simple as I can, because I think that's going to make him appealing as a stylized character. Let's see. I kind of want more of like, you can see, I think I do it on here, but you can see I get a very clear corner of his mouth. In order to do that, I think it's kind of hard, right? Like I try to drag this, but I'm dragging that one. So what you can do is you can use the move gizmo, Alt tap. You can put the cursor anywhere just to kind of show you. It was down there. If I hold Control and drag on my mesh, it masks by topology. So what I can do is I can mask that upper part right there, and then I can like freely drag this without affecting the upper part. So I might do that a little bit. And then let's Control tap on the background to invert the mask. I'm pressing Control H to hide the mask, so I'm not looking at it. Control H, much like you would use in Maya for hiding something. Let's go ahead and fill in this area a bit. right? And then we can then just like clean up this area a little bit. I just click and drag to clear the mask. Oops. Be careful if you have Dynamesh active. Whenever you control drag, it like re-dynameshes your mesh, so just keep that in mind. Let's see. I want the corner of his eye. The corner of his brows should be like, you know, where his upper eyelid and his lower eyelid kind of meet. His should also be where the brow ridge and that transition from cheekbone to non-cheekbone happens. Let's go up a subdivision level. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold Alt with the trim dynamic on, and I'm just going to come through and I'm just going to kind of etch this area. And if I want this to be gradual, I'm going to go down to a low Z intensity. And so we'll just go here. And sometimes that's like a really easy way to like clean or define like really clear boundaries or shape delineations, right? So if I want like a particular shape to his brow region, I'm just using the what's it called? Damien standard, and then just using the normal version of it to draw like a sharp crease in there, right? So that's how I'm getting these creases. If you hold Alt, you're drawing like a line or an edge. So I can come up here and I can go ahead and just kind of draw this shaping of the brow region. Maybe we'll just kind of put in a little bit of a forehead kind of shape there, or like a brow ridge shape there. I might come back in here with like the clay brush or clay build up to just build up some mass if I want to. Okay. And let's go ahead and just, and then we can come back in and just reduce that a little bit because, you know, it's a little extreme in some areas and we don't want everything to always be so perfect, you know, and always so sharp and clean across the whole model. Because if you do, then your whole character feels, just doesn't feel right. So, and you'll notice with like BOGO, that's one of the great things about this model is like you see that sharp line, but then they lose it, right? It gets really soft. Feels very soft and fleshy, but then there's areas where it's like a little bit crisper and sharper. So that's like true across this entire character. So let's come back up here. Let's keep working on this guy. I'll just go ahead and save this, Control S. Save, yes. Okay. All right. So you can see there's like a little weird hiccup, like it goes around here and then it goes like that. And you can't see it in every angle, or like right here, it looks, hey, that looks pretty perfect. But down here it doesn't. So that tells me there's, yeah, you can see there's like a bit of like a weird dip going on right there. So I'm just going to go ahead and use that move brush. And I'm doing it at too high a poly level. I'll try to do it down here. If I want to do it at a low poly level, but I want to see what it looks like smooth, I can just click on dynamic, you know. But keep in mind, if you have high subdivision levels, right? So if I go up my subdivision level stack and I still have dynamic turned on, things get slow because it's still subdividing your model for you visually. So just keep that in mind. It's definitely like a little kind of gooey in this area. So I'm not going to, I need to not worry about it too much. To help clean it up, I can use the clay brush, or like I'm doing right here is using hard polish. Hard polish is really good for flattening and kind of like taking a whole area and like redefining it as a plane. So if you see like certain planes or forms that you really like and you want to reinforce them, you know, or hard polish is really nice for that, right? It essentially just kind of like enhances like an edge area or a plane transition. I'm just gonna soften that area for now. Cool. So I've given him kind of like this like very chiseled kind of, you can see it's kind of like the same thing here. BOGO doesn't have it quite as extreme, but you'll see it probably on some of these characters, right? So you have like a triangle here, and then you have like the square region here, and then you have we were just looking at that, right? Is like you have this top plane right here, you have the corner of the eyes, and you have the underside of the brows. And so we can go there. Again, I'm often going to different, let's turn perspective back on. I'm often going to different views because I can see there's like a little bumpy there. There's like some ridges in here. So I'll either like smooth those out. Let's go down to subdivision level. So I'll either smooth those out as best as I can with like the smooth brush, or I'll use something like clay to fill it in. I would probably also on this kind of character, you know, like do like a little bit of shaping on his nose area, because we kind of established that with his brow, and his nose muzzle kind of thing starts to lose a little definition. Similarly, we can come in here and we can like define the lip line a little bit better. So I can come in here and just use that Damien standard just to kind of like really give it an edge in here. So I want that to go all the way around like that. And so that can also help a little bit. So let's come in here and I might click solo because sometimes other objects can get in the way. And similarly, you might want to go ahead and let's go ahead and do select select lasso. Let's do that. So we'll just do because sometimes like it can accidentally project on the wrong part of your model. So just to clean this up, I might come in here and we're just going to go ahead and use the Damien standard just to kind of like define like a clean lip line. And then I'm just going to make this a little bit more consistent in here. So I'm adding some volume back here because it gets a little thin and pinchy. And, you know, I might adjust that later, but that's just to make it so it like kind of matches this area up here a little bit better. You see when I use Damien standard, it kind of pinched in here and messed up a little bit of a spot. But let's go ahead and unsolo that. There we go. And yeah, I'm not super happy with that, but that's good enough for now. I might reduce this corner of the mouth thingy. And again, like try to let that be something that happens through when we do expressions. Because the more we exaggerate those expressions now, the harder it is for us to we have less room to work with, and when we try to give him other expressions or other poses, and so the topology can only be a certain way. All right, cool. All right, something you'll notice that I did on the other one is, so we'll come back over here. I did a couple of things. So first, let's go ahead and I might address this a little bit. I'm gonna make this a little bit more spherical. So it was getting a little flat, and so I'm just kind of looking back at this one. I'm not going to try to match the other one. You know, this one's it always comes out a little bit different every time you do it second time. So what I'm going to do is, let's go ahead and pull this up. You know, I'm just using the move brush. Something I can do that's kind of nice is you can, if this is a pretty low topology, so I'm going to drag this down to lower topology, there's a button called clay polish. And what that usually does is that kind of goes through and cleans up your, it like redefines your mesh based on like flat surfaces it flattens, and then edges it enhances. So you see all the sharp edges got sharper and all the flat surfaces got flatter. And then you just clear a mask because for some reason it makes a mask. Don't ask me why. And then we just want to clean up these arcs and these forms. So one of the things is because this was high res mesh and I was just sculpting freely on it, like it gets a little wobbly, right? Like this line goes, you know, and then like you can always go through. There's nothing hurting you from going through and just like making your curves feel like more consistent and fluid, right? Almost like they're like bowing branches, or you're like bending a rod, or like something that's elastic, right? You get these like clean, you want these like clean shapes for stylized characters. Another thing you do is you might, you know, it's just too high poly, so I might just come in here and just Z-mesh it really low. And then I could just, you know, add subdivisions back in, and usually that helps clean up a lot of like the irregularities and stuff like that. You might lose some detail, but we can always re-enhance it. Something I might do here is I'm going to do the nostrils, get those nostrils in, and I'm going to do I have these like little eyelid objects that are under eye kind of stuff that I did as well, so I'm going to come in and do that as well. But let's just go ahead and get you know, like I said, I go through and I like dick around with too much stuff. And yeah, the other thing is like keep your shapes simple. So I'm, you know, I'm like getting a little too anatomical with some things, so I'm just going to try to make sure all my like shapes are simpler. I'll probably come in here and let's go ahead and this guy right here, what I did was I just Z-meshed it really low, and I ran that a couple times just to kind of simplify it as much as possible. And then I'm just going to treat this, you can kind of see it on this one, but you know, we have just this rib cage object. So all I'm doing is I'm just going to go ahead and select this ribcage object. I press D for now because we don't need the we don't need this to be subdivided to be high poly, but so it looks smooth, but then it's a lot easier for me to manipulate and move. Let's go ahead and make sure it's symmetrical. It's not, so I'm going to do mirror and weld. There we go. And I'm just going to go ahead and do something like this. And I would recommend we can look at it over here to kind of see it. So we'll solo this. Let's go ahead and separate these. So let's do split to similar parts. Say okay. There we go. So you can kind of see it on this guy, that it's like kind of like a really simple kind of, you have this raised kind of bow shape right here. So you have this bow shape, comes down, and then it kind of flattens out, and you have like this, and then, like this kind of sharp edge. You have your upward facing chest, and then you have like this is kind of like the edges of your rib cage, like your rib cage if you're doing this would be like, like your ribs would be coming. Ooh. Oh, it's probably because I need to subdivide it. Right? Let's do dynamic, and then let's go up a subdivision level, up a subdivision level. Okay, there we go. So you can see like our ribs would go like that, right? And so, that's kind of coming, and this is like the back, I'm drawing these terribly, but, those would connect to the back of your spine, right? So this is like that bow of like your lower ribs. Let's turn off solo. Okay. So we're going to make a shape kind of like that one. Let's go in here. And so I'm going to ignore this one. Again, I'm going to Z mesh this pretty low. Because the lower we keep it for now, until we get all of our shapes in place and we merge everything together, the easier it is for us to manipulate and work with. Let's go ahead and make sure it's mirrored. If I had turned on symmetry before I mirrored them, then that wouldn't have been a problem. A lot of times I'll just smooth this just to lose a lot of that detail. Okay, and let's go ahead and just kind of keep working with this. Let's go ahead and pull that rib cage out. Oops. I'll just push this one in. And I'll keep coming back to it, but the rib cage usually ends. Let's go ahead and I'll do brush, clip, circle. I don't know if I can see that. Control Shift. Let's just come down here, clip, circle. I just want to kind of draw something so you can see it. The rib cage kind of takes up this shape right here. So usually like those wings that you're seeing here and here are usually like part of the trapezius muscle. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to go ahead and just pull these in like I would expect like a normal rib cage object to be. Maybe these guys come in a little bit more as well. And then same thing with this is I'll just kind of bring this in, and we can either have a separate, like I don't know if, let me see, like this one they combine them all together in one, but you might have like a deltoid, or sorry, a trapezius kind of object that transitions back there and helps with it a bit. Let's go ahead and just pull this out and pull this in. And we'll have to do the same thing with arms. Arms are the part that I didn't do just because I think that was going to take the most amount of time, but you can study Equerchet models like block-in objects like this. So let's go ahead and we're going to come in to here. Keep forgetting which one we're on. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and we can do brush insert. So we can either drop in a new model by going insert, right? So we can do insert, and then I can drop in a cube. Another thing I could do is I can do brush insert, and there's these polygon primitives here, and so I can do a I think it's a, I don't know what a cube is. Let's see. If we press Shift F, okay, that's a cube. And then what is it? Insert cube. Oh, let's do cube. Definitely. Let's turn on symmetry. So I'm just going to drop those in. And you can see that's just like creating some weird shapes, but then I can just switch to the move tool. You can see it's automatically like oriented and everything to it. And that makes it really easy for me to kind of position and scale. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to separate these. So we're just going to separate the arms out. So split hidden. Control Shift tapping on those to isolate them, and then splitting. And then I just need to subdivide them. I could just probably run ZRemesher if I wanted to over them. Maybe that's probably way too high. We want to keep these, again, really low poly. Add subdivision levels as we need them to get more detail if we're not getting enough detail in our current form. But the lower poly it is, the easier it is for us to work with. And then I just press D to turn on dynamic subdivision. So then what I can do is I can just, pull these over. You'll notice it gets kind of hard when you get closer and closer and closer to the center line with symmetry turned on, because they just don't want to touch, because I think the brush is overlapping that symmetry line and like touching both sides. But we'll address that in a second. So, the chest, we have some free floating ribs. You can feel it on your own. You have like half your rib cage, or like probably a third of it goes down below where your pecs end. So we're gonna have that pecs end right there. I recommend looking at anatomy models of how, let's see. Let me go to reference, anatomy reference, crochet, and I'll just drop one of these guys in here. Let's see. So we'll just drag this down here. Here's some more examples. Just drop these guys in here as well. There you go. So you can see where the pec connects here, doesn't go quite all the way down. The rib cages are down here, and then it connects to the upper part of the bicep. So what we'll do is I'll just come in here. What I can do is I can use snake hook. So snake hook. Just going to tell you it's better with sculptures. That's okay. Let's turn off RGB mode. And so the cool thing about that is it has like a really clear kind of like, I'm just going to extend and draw a pull out there. So it's getting a little flat, so I'm going to switch back to my move brush. Let's just go ahead and smooth this out a bit. And here I can just build it, add in some, what's it called? Clay buildup. And push down on that side right there. And we can just go ahead and pull this in. I'm not going to worry too much about the arms themselves right now, so I'm kind of like guesstimating a little bit. And I'm probably just like over or like modeling these a little bit. So I don't want to get too crazy. It's probably better for this just to kind of, this is a pro tip, when you have the move brush, normally your move is relative to your camera view. So if I wanted to push these in, like into the surface, I'd have to like angle and pull it in like that, right? If you hold Alt while you're moving, normally Alt is like does the inverse of whatever you're trying to do with a brush, but Alt, what it does is it moves along the normals, which can be really, really helpful. We're getting that issue, like I was saying, especially you can see on the clavicle on this one, where as you get closer to the center line, they get kind of screwed up. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just kind of turn off symmetry, scooch them on one side, and then mirror and weld. And there we go. I might do this another time. So let's just go and pull them right there, mirror and weld. Then I can turn symmetry back on, and then we can just smooth that. And I can do the same thing here. Turn off symmetry. Just get one side the way I need it. Let's go ahead and simplify this form. Mirror and weld. Turn symmetry back on. Let's go and just push that back into the chest. All right, so you can see how this is all staying pretty clean. As I'm working, I'm trying to like, pay attention to a lot of the curves and the forms I'm getting. I can see even here I get like this kind of dip down and pull up. It can be a little hard to see sometimes. So I just need to probably like play around with like how these guys intersect each other, or maybe the issue is in this model right here. And so I'm just gonna smooth it down a little bit, just to lose a little bit of that volume. Looks like at some point I got asymmetrical. It's hard to tell. But anyways, okay, let's go back up to the eyes. I did something similar with the nostrils. Sorry, I see something that I don't like. I was just gonna add inflate. So inflate's, I put it on my 8 key, but inflate's just good for just adding volume throughout your mesh. So I might just add some mass to the pecs. You gotta be careful, with the pecs. They can look a little silly at some point if you inflate them too much. So anyways, that's going along okay. For the, let's see. I came up here. What was I doing? Let's see. Oops. I'll push these guys down. So again, I'm using that holding Alt with the move brush to move along the normals. And then I can pull this up here. Which is I'm not like happy with the shape of the muzzle right now. It's kind of hard to articulate. Like I said, these are things that like you kind of pick up as you go along, like what you think looks good and what doesn't look good. And hopefully what you think looks good ends up being what other people think looks good. Not always a guarantee. I haven't been coming through all the views, right? Like If something doesn't look quite as appealing or good from a certain view, chances are you need to fix it. So it might look good from one view, but from another view, it kind of like doesn't quite hold up. Then it's a good idea to take the time to like analyze that and understand like what do you like and not like about that. Like, is this something that is can be improved and made better? Because you're not going to be seeing your character all the time from one view. He's going to turn his head. He's going to look in a different direction. And I just made some subtle adjustments, but I can come in here and see how much these changes are affecting him, right? Might even want to go back and have a version that you save, so it's a good idea to duplicate your object once in a while, just to be like, okay, I'm gonna come back and see, I've done like 2 hours work, I've been mushing around the head a lot, is there a way I can compare and see if all the changes I made are good or not? Let's go ahead and just add back in some of that, some of the sharper shapes in here. Okay. Okay, so another thing I'm gonna do is the nostrils. So in this case, I'm just gonna insert a ring. I could have, again, done the insert mesh on the mesh, but in this case, I'm just gonna do a ring, scale it. Let's go ahead and pull it forward, and let's scale this down. Droop. Okay, droop. And what I'm gonna do is I can go ahead and let's slice part of this off. So I'm just gonna slice curve. We're just gonna get rid of this inside part down here. So we'll just delete hidden. And I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of push it into in position. Let's scale it down. Let's go down here. I'm just rotating and moving it. And then what I'm gonna do is I'll pull this out a little bit. And then I'm going to just inflate the whole thing. So we're just going to run inflate on it just to kind of blow it up a little bit. I'm going to come back in here and let's go ahead and just, I'm just going to get it to penetrate the object. There we go. And I'll press D on my keyboard to turn on dynamic subdivision level. And we have this really clean kind of object to work with, which is nice. And the cool thing, again, like by not having it all like part of one mesh, sometimes, you can get these really clean shapes. So let's just go ahead and mirror and weld. Oops, let's turn off local symmetry. Mirror and weld, there we go. Turn on symmetry. And I might just kind of reduce these a little bit. I might want like a sharp line here and then like a curvy line up there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna go ahead and press BZM for Z modeler. I'm not gonna go over all this, but it just combines a lot of polygon actions into one model. You'll see when you hover over like a face, edge, or vertice, it shows you like a different thing. And if you right click, you can choose what action you're gonna do. So if I hover over this edge and I say crease, edge loop complete. And so if I draw that, you can see it's going to crease that. Oop, let's go ahead and go down here and do that. And so you can see it kind of creases it. So right now it might look a little bit like so what, that doesn't look that good. Let's go ahead and do this one down here. What's cool is I can come in here and I can come to geometry, Z remesher, and let's go ahead and keep creases and Z remesh. And so what it's going to do is it's going to, and let's go down to a lower Z intensity. You can see it's Z remeshing it, but keeping that crease. Let's go even lower. Let's go pretty low. There you go. So you can see it Z remeshed it and kept that crease. And so that, that can give you some really, really, really stylized forms. And some like hard, like that kind of alternation between hard and soft edges pretty simply. And then when I merge these all together, I can like carve out like his actual nostril. But again, the cool thing about this is I can like really play around with the curvature and the shape of that really cleanly. And I could do the same thing with his eyelids too, right? And I wouldn't wait too long to do this, but I might want to go ahead and figure out like once that he's looking good. I think I did this and then I did something similar. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do brush, insert, brush, curve. So I can do curve tubes, right? So I can come in here and do draw it in like this. So we can come in here. Let's go ahead and bring that size down a little bit and just tap on the mesh. Oops. There we go. Let's go ahead and I'll hold Alt and drag, Control Z that back. Ooh, I'm on the wrong mesh. Let's Control Z this back. Get rid of that. But we're just going to go ahead and draw right around there. Okay. It doesn't seem like it's snapping correctly. So what we're going to do is we're going to do brush, curves, tube, snap. There we go. I'm on the wrong one. So it should snap to the mesh now. And then I might just, one thing that's cool is you can come in the stroke menu, go to curve modifiers, and I can actually change the size of this along the length of the curve. So if I come in here and let's say I'm going to bring this side down. So this is the root, this is the tip, and then I can just kind of pull this up so it's thicker in the middle but thinner at the ends. And so if I tap on the mesh, you can see that kind of happens a little bit. Let's go stroke. Let's go and make this a little bit more exaggerated, like that. Just tap on mesh, and let's go ahead and scale this up. Oh, not that much. Not that much. Let's go back in here. Maybe I'll just pull these guys closer so it has more of a fall off. There we go. And then when you're done with that, you just tap anywhere else to get rid of the curve. And then I just need to split these out. So I'm just going to split hidden. So I just split those objects out. And then I'm just going to go ahead and use my move brush to kind of get these into position. I'm doing like a lot of just like intersecting the geometry kind of thing. You know, like these are all a lot of just primitive objects kind of overlapping other ones, because eventually what I'll do is I'm just going to dynamesh them together and then Z-remesh everything. But I can use that to get like some like kind of like lower eye socket kind of eye bag sort of shapes. And you can again see that on like, you know, you got a bit of that with BOGO is like somewhere in here. Actually, they don't really do it on BOGO. You can definitely see it on like characters like this one and this one, like kind of in between their eyelids and their eye sockets. They got like a little bit of a bag. And especially if you guys are going for that like kind of tired look, that might be a good addition for him. But we could also reduce it if we feel like it's like making him look too tired. What I might do is the easiest way to probably do that, honestly, is just smooth that out. And then when we merge them all together, you know, I can always just like smooth that transition to the point where it's practically invisible, but you can just feel it a little bit. I'm just using that move brush again. Okay. Forgot too long. Let's go ahead and add that cranium in. So we're just going to go ahead and come up here to insert. Where are we at? Subtool. Insert sphere 3D. I'm just going to get his cranium in. Oops. This is just like the base of his skull. Let's scale that up and bring it down. And we can reshape this, but you know, if I keep it fairly circular, it's going to be pretty clean, just like we talked about. You know, I might want to kind of clean up the transition in some of these shapes. Let's go down some subdivision levels so I can like really smooth down that area right there. Okay. Alrighty. If I want to make I kind of feel like his head's small, so I might make it bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and alt click on this guy right here. And to move to multiple objects, you can click on this, and that's actually going to let you control shift tap on objects. So you can see anything that's not kind of spiked out, that means it's active. And whatever subtool I have currently active is the one where if I do something like I want to move this pivot point to the center of the object, it does that. And then and let's go ahead and make sure we get the teeth, and then those thingies, not those thingies, but it's okay. We don't really care about those thingies. Oh, let's go ahead and get rid of those. I'll worry about those later. I might actually, so you can see the nostrils aren't moving, even though the fact that they're, the nostrils aren't moving, even though they're selected, right? So that's usually due to, if I alt click on that, you can see it's masked out in its own layer. And then I just come back to that skull because I already had that center point saved, and I might just scale his head up a little bit. Right now I feel like his head is a little tiny. And then I can just switch off to any brush to get out of this, and I can turn that off to switch back to not selecting multiple objects. And I might just come in here, and if I need to, make adjustments to like some of his proportions to kind of update and match that. I haven't been looking in this angle as much as I should have, but remember to always, kind of go around your object and double check. Something I do on my other one, you can kind of see it on that one is, I give him like kind of like this under neck kind of area. Get a little bit with Bogo, but you'll get it on other characters as well, kind of like this kind of sack area, where it's just like muscle connecting from the trachea to the chin. So that's just personal preference, not everybody does that, but that's what I do. So I just did that on, or we can do that on this one too, where it's just, I just take this and I'm just going to duplicate it in this case, and just we're going to rotate, scale down, move forward, oops, move up, scale down, smoosh it down, and elongate it in this way. And then just switch the move tools, make sure we have symmetry turned on, and we're just going to go ahead and kind of, this is kind of looking terrible, but something like kind of like that. I don't know, something I always like to put in, but I don't always see it, so it's not super terribly important. Let's see. Okay, what else do we need? So you'll notice something like we came over here and we were talking about this one. You can see this one has a lot of actual object kind of shapes in there. It's something you might want to end up doing. So we did that kind of similar-ish with the nostrils, but we might even want to do something similar to that with the eyebrows. I might even want to reuse this object. So let's actually, let's come in here and we'll just do brush, curve, tube, snap, tube. So it's first always behind here, tube snap. Okay, and then we're just going to come in here, and it won't let you do it. So you'll see it says this mesh is composed of multiple subdivision levels. They freeze them, so I'm just going to Control Z that. I'll select something that doesn't have subdivision levels, so I just Alt clicked on this, and I'm just using it temporarily as like an object that can store this, so we can do that. And so let's go ahead and go to that stroke menu, and let's not have that quite so drastic like that. Okay, let's do stroke. Maybe we can let it go down like here. And let's just go ahead and bring the size down a bit, up a little bit. Okay. And then while the curve is still active, we can like move the curve in. There's different behaviors you can set with the stroke menu. So if I go ahead and pull this to the side, oop, let's pull this. Oh, come on. There you go. Okay. So what we can do is we can come to the curve, and we can like snap the start. So it's the lock start, lock end. So that just makes it so I can like move the, let's do bend end as well. There you go. So I can move this around, and like the end and the start, and then I can go ahead and let's Control Z this. Let's turn off snap. There we go. Just for now. We'll probably want to reset the brush in a little bit, so to its default behavior, but while this is still active, I can kind of come in here and reshape this. So I got that initial shape, but while the curve is still active, I can, play around with it and do more interesting things, or like really refine the shape. You can see it kind of like starts to, you can see that, right? Like it's starting to like kind of like go on itself. So we might turn this to be elastic, or liquid. I can't remember, never remember. I always forget which one's which. All right, so it's getting a little wonky. I don't really like this, so there's, I might stop this in a second, but let's tap off that. And again, let's go ahead and split hidden. So split hidden, and then this object right here, we can do the same thing we did with the other one where we do brush Z modeler, and then we can just crease this edge loop. I don't really need to re-topologize that one, but let's go ahead and reshape this now that we can have full control over it. And I'm not 100% sure this is something I would personally do, but I did want to show it because it can be pretty cool. And if you know the shape you're trying to get and you know how to manipulate these tools, they can give you some really, really clean shapes like these for like nothing. And I might come in here and let's just kind of make some space for this. So I'm just going to push this in a little bit. And then let's come back in here and I'm just going to grab the bottom of this and pull it down to fill in this space just so it's like nice and soft. There we go. And, you know, I'm making a lot of creative decisions, like I said, that you might be like, how the hell am I supposed to already know that? How to do it? Or like, how the hell was I supposed to know that's a good idea? Or this is what I should be making. It's something that, like I said, comes with a lot of experience or time, but to help with that, you just studying. Like, that's why I have so many of these references pulled up. My stylized references folder has like looks like it has 5,000 loose items, and then I have probably like another 2,000 or 3,000 organized images. So, you know, it takes a lot of studying, and I save anything that I see that looks good. So, you know, I'm like always trying to like look online and absorb things and look at cool models that I see on ArtStation or characters that are similar to the characters I want to make, and then kind of go from there. Um, you know, learn from people who've already done this before and have done a great job, right? And then if you study their work and you figure out what you like about their stuff, then your work is just going to get a lot better. Okay. Anyways, okay, I think this is a pretty good spot to stop at. What I would do probably next, or one of the things I would do next is make sure this is mirrored. Okay, good. Is sorry, I'm getting nitpicky. Happens. Okay. All right. Is I'd probably go ahead and start blocking in the eyelids. Sorry, I said I'm done, but I'm not done. Oops. Nice thing about that crease is I can like smooth this and do all kinds of fun stuff with the shape to clean it up. But that crease keeps that like kind of sharp edge delineation thing going on. So even if I like came in here and I like was inflating this a bit or deflating it, you can see it's going to keep that shape. Let's see if even if we polish this, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and polish. You see polish, what polish does is it like cleans up and smooths out the forms. But because I have that crease on there for now, it's applied. And if you want to get rid of the crease, of course, eventually what you'll do is when I subdivide this, so you'll see if I go in here and go to geometry and add, let's turn off dynamic subdivision level. Notice as I'm subdividing this, it's actually adding in Control D. Let's go ahead and remove that crease, so uncrease all. Right, that topology is still there because it added in, and if I added another subdivision level, it added some topology that was close enough to each other that it keeps that form. So that can be really nice. And so for the eyelids, what I would do is I would insert perfect spheres. We really want perfect spheres is going to be key to make this work. This one's, I don't know why polysphere is a thing. Let's go ahead and see if we can insert like sphere 3D. Yeah, that's probably more like what we want. And this is something I probably would almost consider remodeling in Maya anyways, just because I can really control the resolution. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this down into being, let's go ahead and just fill this with white. There we go. I want to get this down to where the actual eyeball is. Let's come in here. Okay. Like where my eyeball socket is thing. And I'm going to get it as close to size and position accuracy as I can. You don't want to go too small with your eyeball on a stylized character. The bigger your eye is, the more clean and flat the eye can read, which is nice. You know, if your eyeball here, let's hide the, there we go. You know, it's like kind of like that one's pretty decent, but I might even consider scaling it up and then pushing it in, because the larger the sphere is, the rate of curvature is lower. So that can make it feel really stylized. Whereas if it, it's taking up the same amount of space in the eye socket visually, but it's a smaller eyeball, you have like a more extreme curvature, which can be okay, but sometimes that can also make it feel a little strange. So if you're going for stylized or cartoony, I definitely recommend trying to keep the eyeball the eyeball larger and just pushing it more inside the head. If you try on transparency, it might also be like a weird shape or not what you expect in terms of size. But that happens with a lot of stylized characters. So let's bring that back. So let's see. Okay, so it's pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hide this, or hide these guys. So I have a couple options. One is I can do kind of like what I did with this object right here, where I can draw the eyelids on. Another thing I could do is we're going to go ahead and duplicate this object. I'm going to solo it. Actually, first what we're going to do is we'll solo it just so we see we got a duplicate. I want to do a slice. So I'm going to slice it. What slicing does is it's going to cut it into separate polygroups. So if I slice it across like here, if I turn on polyframe, you can see I sliced it like that. Let's turn off solo. So I want to slice it kind of like where the eyelid corners were. Keeping it straight's probably a good idea. So let's see, something like that. If you press Alt or hold space, you can move it. So if you need to reposition it, you can press space while you're holding down that button. And then what's cool is we can go to geometry. Let's go ahead and just solo this really quickly. We can do panel loops. Oop. Oh, what did I do? And we're going to go to polygroups or edge loops, sorry, panel loops. And let's go ahead and do not as much thickness. And then we're going to turn off beveling or bring beveling pretty low. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to geometry. And we're going to where's geometry? Am I in geometry already? Yep. Z-mesher. And we're going to turn on keep groups. And then that's just going to remesh it for me. It can be a little tricky because when I did that, like the inside of these are like the same exact polygroup. So we get this one here, that one there. Let's hide these ones out here. And here's like they get kind of like a little complicated. So what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and we're going to hide the outer shells. We're going to hide the lower shells, inner shells. You can see there's like an upper plane and a lower plane. I want to simplify these and just do auto groups. So we're going to turn on auto groups. That should not have given them the exact same polygroup though. That's a little concerning. I don't think they are the same polygroup. Yeah, okay, cool. They're separated. All right, and then I don't really need the interior. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna hide the shelf and the outer parts. So let's go ahead and go back to select rectangle, click and drag to invert. And I'm just gonna delete hidden. I don't really need the inside pieces. And so then I'm gonna turn off solo. And then what we can do is now we have kind of like eyelids, which is great. And then what I can do is, I might go ahead and let's see. We're gonna select actually, let's go ahead and do this. We're gonna do auto groups. Okay, wait. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna do solo just so we can look at this and not get too confused. I'm gonna go ahead and go to geometry crease, and I'm gonna crease polygroups. So increase polygroups just so I can have that sharp edge. And then I'm going to go ahead and auto group. So that's just going to, cancel. What did I click on? Auto group. Okay, there we go. And that's just going to connect the inside. So that's going to make it a lot easier for me because then what I can do is I can just select this part, control shift, press control tap on the background to mask it, and then control shift bring this back. And then I can, start rotating and transitioning and angling this to get this or use like the move brush to get this into like a kind of relaxed eyelid kind of pose. I'd use move and not move topological in this situation because a lot of the times the mesh is disappearing into another mesh and that kind of gets annoying. I'm gonna have to rework this guy right here if this is kind of like what I end up doing, and then just alternating my mask, and then we're just going to go ahead and we could just go ahead and try rotating it up first, and then just the corners of the eyelids. Make sure I got the move topological. I want to keep it hugging the eyelid for the most part. Let's turn on dynamic subdivision, just make sure. And I might smooth this out if I feel like, you know, it's getting a little kinky. But let's go ahead and push that down. I want the eyelids to meet in the corners. So we're just going to go ahead and pull those in. I want to make sure the eyelid is hugging the eyeball, but not going through it too much if I can help it. When I do quad drawing, retopologizing, I usually redo the topology of the eyelids. But you can see they're not touching there. So eyelids can take a long time to like finagle and get the like nice clean shapes. So just keep that in mind. Happens. And yeah, so I might, especially if I'm kind of in the situation where I'm still trying to figure out like the look of my character and things like that, I might keep the eyes like more open than I would be comfortable with. And then once we get approval, everybody's like, yeah, it looks awesome, you know, go for it. Then you can go back into making your character like more neutral. And you know, I what I could do is, I mean, I still have the object, but I can put these into like a group. And then what I can do is, if I wanted to show my team, well, let's go ahead and mirror these guys. Oops. A mirror, mirror and welds. A mirror, mirror and welds. Let's go back to this guy. I got a mask on there, so let's just make sure we clear that mask and then mirror and welds. There we go. You can see there's a gap I need to fix. So that looks pretty good. Actually, it looks pretty damn good if I may say so myself. And then yeah, so I just keep going through here. You can do it later in the retopologize phase, or somebody else can do it, of just creating the iris. Like I said, I would probably like export this eyeball object into Maya and then make another eyeball that's in the right position with the right poly count, right? Because it's too high poly for me for doing a lot of good stuff for the irises. But what we can do is we can do brush Z modeler again, and then we can find like where the iris is. So let's crease that, where the pupil is going to be. Let's go ahead and crease that one as well. And then what I can do is I can do group. So let's do polygroups. We can do group by crease, I think, hopefully. They might be in the newer version. Regroup by edges, UV groups. Regroup by edges. That's annoying. It'd be nice if I can just get that to polygroup. The other thing I could do is I can come in here and do like polygroup. So I'm hovering over a polygon. I can say polygroup, polyloop. And then what I can do is go point. And then we're going to go down here to point. And then what I can do is, let's do this. We're going to go, come in here. Point. And then what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and Control Shift tap this. We'll do auto groups. And then I want to go ahead and, this is the iris, the orange in this inner part right here. Control W, and then there we go. And then what I can do is maybe I take this, select that, mask it. Oop, cancel. Shift F. And what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and invert my mask by control tapping on the background, control tapping on this mesh to make it, to let it soften and blend out. Invert that. And I can just push this back. Actually, well, it's going to go like this. But I don't want to affect the sclera, so I'm just going to hold control and drag over that whole thing. And so you can see now I got a hard edge here. And if that sounds like way too complicated, then and then let's go ahead and do polish by groups. You can see it's kind of like polishing them but keeping the edges of the groups. If that's like was too fast and too complicated, then that's where I would advise you guys just go ahead and try to do it in Maya. Oops, turn on symmetry. So his I made his iris and his pupils too large, so that can be kind of annoying, and that happens. So I'm just gonna, for now, I'm gonna Control Z that back, and then mirror and wells to get rid of that. Something else you can do while you're working is you can like kind of like paint in where the iris needs to be, and sometimes you can use that as reference. and when you're sizing things. I know if you go to ArtStation, there's like automatic tools, like they come in when they have like little levels or sorry, layer information where you can like resize the pupils, resize the iris to whatever you want. But we're not going to worry about that. Cool. The only other thing I haven't really done and messed around with is the arm stuff. In this case, what I might do is I'm probably going to just come over here, grab these arms, and just for the time's sake, I'm going to come over here and just insert those. So I'm going to insert those arms. I'm going to come over here. Let's go ahead and hide those. Take this, and we're just going to go ahead and turn on, make sure symmetry's on. And we can definitely do an A pose if you want to, but let's go a little bit less T pose. Let's do more of a T pose, or a little bit more of an A pose and a little less of a T pose. Okay, and let's scale these up, push them in. We don't want the arms to be that much longer than they currently are, but we do want the muscles to be like more prominent. So let's go ahead and fill object, and then what I can do is just kind of get this to sit nicely with the into the upper body. You can reference those. Let's go ahead and come in here and just make this. And I'm, again, I'm like shortcutting a lot of things, but if we come over here and we look at like these écorché models, I might probably need to add a few more in. But let's see if I have any that are like more typos. Don't. This one's pretty good though. I'll include this one. This is like a 3D model of this, so you can kind of see where the muscles go. And so you can see the bicep connects up under into through the armpit. And then the deltoid kind of is the part that we think of as the shoulder, is actually like a big mass of muscle that sits on top. Okay, I might simplify some of these forms. He's going to be pretty big and strong, but let's go ahead and we're going to grab this. And, oops. If I need to, I might separate these out. So I might go ahead and go split to similar parts. Say okay. Come back in here. That way I'm not worrying about accidentally hitting the other one. Let's see. So I know the looking at these, the deltoid is going to not be beneath the clavicle. I might move the clavicle up a bit. You can see it kind of connects into, or right underneath the clavicle, or to the clavicle, actually connects to the clavicle. Get that deltoid. We'll make this a little bit beefier back here. Turn on that soft select. And then, we might just make this, we'll play around with the proportions till it feels right. He might have like more of like a beefy forearm. And then like a really beefy like a wrist. But, play around with it and you'll find something that you like. And, you can look at characters. Like if you look over at like Bogo, right? Like his arms, you can see his deltoid kind of goes way lower. This, whatever this thing is, it's not technically a deltoid because he's like got more mammalian anatomy, but you can see his upper arm, or his forearm, is like way thicker and way heavier than it is on this like lizard guy. But we want to keep generally speaking, I think if you want it to feel normal-ish, you probably want to keep the proportions of the upper arm and the lower arm pretty close to each other in terms of length. If you don't, the movements can be a little weird if you're like have a really short stubby upper arm and then like a really long lower arm, because then you don't have a lot of really good references for bipedal characters moving around. Okay. Oops. I'm just going to kind of fill this in a little bit. Okay. Cool. All right. Sweet. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We'll stop here. This is plenty, I think, to kind of get you going, and plenty to kind of work towards. And then I I wouldn't start merging these things together. Wait till you get like approval or sign off on the stuff from your team, but also from me. The sooner you start, like if you just dive in again into like, you know, trying to merge all your pieces together, you lose a lot of flexibility, a lot of that form and cleanliness. You can see how easy it is for me to like manipulate and edit and clean up certain things. So I don't want to, it's that all comes from me keeping things pretty low poly and pretty clean, and keeping certain forms like separated as different meshes. And so, you know, if I break away from that too soon, then you know, I kind of lose all that flexibility that I had. Uh, you know, it can seem like you don't have a lot of flexibility because you're working within the confines of um, a low poly mesh, and I can't add detail. But remember, we're not really like in a detail stage, definitely not in detail stage. If we need to, we can subdivide 1 or 2 times to add like topology if we feel like we need it to like define certain planes and forms. But for the most part, you know, if we dive into that, or like, you know, doing that stuff too much, you know, trying to make everything look clean and like super cool, like, hey, that's a stylized character, or like, look at, he looks like an arcane character with his you know, like if you go in and you're trying to do all these things, right, like too soon, then you're just making your mesh a lot harder to work with, you know. But we'll have plenty of time to, or you'll have plenty of time to do things like if you wanted to kind of like do that Adam's apple kind of thing, is, you know, we might come in here and let's make his neck thicker, and then, you know, I might add some subdivision levels, and, you know, we might kind of add in kind of like this Adam's apple kind of shape here. And just, again, just using that Damien standard, you know, that Damien standard does so much work for you. But don't do that right now, because for one hand, on one hand, I did that and I was like, oh wow, that looks kind of dumb. I don't like that on him. So just keep that in mind. But you know, play around. You know, maybe he has like kind of like a, you know, think of like an iguana. Maybe he has like kind of like that kind of like sack underneath his neck, or an alligator. I think of them having those kinds of things. I'm noticing this feels really flat back here. So I might, you know, just add a little thickness to this direction here, so it's like a little bit more rounded back there. You know, I can come in here and I'll add a back version of this. Let's see, the equichet. And you can look up, just go in Pinterest and look up like anatomy stuff, like stylized anatomy, or you can look up like anatomy for artists and things like that. And then you can like see a lot of great references like this. And then, you know, like I might just kind of draw in a bit of a shape for like the back muscles. You know, his spine's, if he's really muscular, his spine's going to be kind of like recessed a little bit because the muscle's going to grow up around it. And then like this, all this stuff down here comes down to here. Let's go down subdivision levels. I'm at a high subdivision levels. Let's make sure we're doing it as low as we can. I just smooth this one out. Let's see. And I'm kind of like, well, eventually I'd merge these guys together, but I like to have this kind of it's not very clear here, but there, you can kind of see it right there. A lot of times you'll have that kind of like where the 7th vertebrae is on the neck, is like a connection point for the back spine, the spine, and then the neck. It's like a good connection point. Okay, cool. All right, so I'll send you some stuff, and we look forward to seeing what you do.